their eyes open. And that's the reality of things. In Planet Poetica, Abel's trauma is so bad that he, as a character, feels the need to look to cigarettes, to look to going to a bar, to suppressing his own emotions and feelings with other things outside of talking about them or communicating them or looking to another source.
Yes. So that's 100% the answer to that. Before we go into the story more, let me just introduce kind of who everybody is so they don't have to talk themselves if they don't want to.
They can do it.
So remember how I told y'all that a TV show, you have a showrunner and then you have your staff writers, and then you have a writer's assistant. And then you kind of have like also like other producers. So the Brian Binder in the byline, this is Brian Binder. So
Well, I was initiating it.
And so Brian is now a senior. He graduates in December, Lord willing, if he can pass film critics.
Wait,
Yeah, especially if you're the TA. So anyway, so Brian and I were, and also Alfredo, who's not here, we're kind of like the producers. I was above them. I worked as a showrunner. I got Brian. Brian wasn't even supposed to be a producer. He wasn't even going to join our group. He's just like, I'll do it for fun. I said, no, you need to be in it. So he became kind of like one of the producers. So he helped run the writer's room sometime, helped with scheduling when we actually filmed. And also, even though we broke the season together, we shared the byline. But again, this is one of those instances where the whole room broke the story over and over and over. So even though we got byline credit because we wrote some of the actual words down, the whole room broke it together. So that's who Brian is. Going down, Elena, who doesn't want to talk. Elena Robbins is one of the main writers at HBU. A lot of people go to her first. Sorry. You're talking. Are you going to talk to me? Not going to talk. You should talk. She's one of the main writers at Houston Baptist. We all had this screenwriting group last year. There was a bunch of people who just started learning and writing a lot. And she was one of the ones people will go to, like, can you edit my script? So she wrote what we called like a bottle episode as well for the season. She was one of the staff writers and story editors. So we would have her look at everything and edit it. In the room, also she would lead writers' room sometimes. Again, writers' room being just our group of Planet Poetica writers. And yeah, she did write an episode for the season, like a whole episode. Now Chris kind of does a lot of, and Elena was also script supervisor, and plays Plastic Girl. Chris did a lot of everything as well. He was in the room a lot. I don't know, did you finish your script?
No.
Okay. So he was a staff writer. He was in there for a lot of breaking the room, which I mean, like the story, which would take sometimes hours and hours. We wouldn't leave till like 3 a.m. We'd be crying. There's been times where I think one time y'all left me because I was so tired. They left me in 1:30 on the floor. I was just like, they're like, bye. And I'm like, bye. And I took a nap there.
It sounds terrible when you put it like that.
Well, there's times I left y'all on the floor too.
I'm afraid I did sleep.
So let me finish with introductions and then we'll do like questions and stuff. But again, I want you to start thinking of questions that actually benefit you to know about the writing process, because this is kind of cool that we were able to do this at HBU as opposed to doing it in LA writers' room. So anyway, Chris is, every character is kind of based loosely on who plays them. And so we based Chris the cameraman off of Chris Castro. Now, Chris Castro in real life is much better. He's much better than Chris the cameraman. Chris in real life is actually responsible, whereas cameraman Chris is not. But it's his alter ego. So he was a character. He wrote actually like the outline in the first few pages of a musical for another episode in the season because we all broke it together. He was in a lot of the rooms. He gave a lot of ideas, and then he was on set a lot and also was acting. So everyone has kind of done everything. And he also wrote a feature last year along with, so these three were in the screenwriting class and they all wrote features, which if you don't remember is a full-length movie script. So that being said, so our writers, like, there's a lot more people that were in the room that aren't here. None of our writer assistant graduated. So this is just a few people that were here, but we basically ran it under the guidance of Josh Shakura as an actual writer's room. And it actually, like, I don't know, it was crazy. So with that being said, do you have questions about the process, the characters, anything that you have off the top of your head, or do you just want us to talk?
Just noticed that when you were saying that y'all were like up to like 3, I guess probably if the team, if it's like a small team or something, I don't know how big y'all's team is or something, but if it's like a small team, I can see why it would be a lot of work.
Yes, it was a lot. Do y'all want to talk about how long it took us to get to the actual final draft?
How long did it take you?
Like a year.
Well, maybe I don't
It
know.
felt like years. It was a lot of in a good way. Okay, so I'm one of the writers. I'm not one of the main writers. But even then, I was still in, especially like what Schofield was saying when we're breaking it. So I would say probably put a couple hundred hours into the first draft.
The first draft.
There's like multiple versions of the first draft. Rewriting sections, bringing in different people to change sections, just spending like 10 to 12 hours just talking about it and actually writing anything, because you gotta get everybody on the same page, and everybody always has something that they could add into it or a different take on it, especially when you have so many writers and you respect everybody's opinion, you respect, and people can write well, you want to hear what they say and what they want to add to the
Oh,
story.
yeah.
It can have a lot of processes where it takes a long time to get all done.
A lot of external processing, and I remember that actually being a conversation. I think it was Brian or someone told me, he's like, not everyone has a good idea. Stop taking everybody's idea. And I was like, but everyone needs to speak. And it was that balance of like, when do we just say we're doing this? And a lot of it was on me. I was not secure enough as a showrunner, so that I was not confident in what I wanted for the show. So everyone gave me these great ideas all the time. Eventually I had to just be like, this is what we're doing, but it was very hard for me to get there. So a lot of it's on me, and they all had great ideas, honestly. I still think so.
Keep the
It's a
vision.
question.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Maya, right? Yes. Okay.
What was the process like developing the characters? Like, how was that in relation to?
That's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the characters in the show kind of take on the personality of the writer who was writing it. And so that I think that could be both good and bad, because I think a lot of the times, like in a writer's room, we know the people, so we know why the characters do certain things, but like the person watching it might not know. So I think there's like a good balance of like writing the character well enough to where people outside of the showroom can understand their quirks, but also you can have fun with it too.
That was true, because we had to keep it, the group kept getting bigger and bigger, so there were fewer and fewer people who had never read the script or heard about it. So then the objectivity got harder and harder, because we're like, is it actually
Funny.
is it
Yeah.
actually funny? Because a lot of it was inside jokes, and is it actually, does it make sense? Because it's a weird world.
I will also say something really cool, and we learned about this in the screenwriting class that we had. One of the most fascinating things that I have learned and experienced as a writer, well, two, but they're connected, is one, when you put yourself into a script and you put characters that you know. So it was easy for us because we were putting exaggerated characters of ourselves into the script, so we were writing based on ourselves. But when I was writing my feature, when I've been writing other shorts, you start writing these characters and the development of the character comes because it has to. And you learn that the characters in your script make decisions because that's the decision that they would make. And that's the only decision that that character would make. It's a really interesting thing that you kind of have to experience for yourself, where definitely, granted, there are exceptions and there are times where, excuse me, when you're writing, you think, oh, would this character make this decision, this decision? Of course, that stuff happens, and whatever, it still happens to me. But there does come a flow when you just start writing, and just like magic, the characters, you write these characters and just somehow they make decisions because that's the decision that they would make. So
Yeah, because story comes out of character.
the story comes out.
Yeah, so you don't say, I'm going to make this plot and put a character in that will match it. You say, I'm writing a character, and then out of what the character does, you will have your story. Chris, you had your hand.
Well, you kind of answered my question, because I was going to ask, do you tend to work from the end to the beginning or the beginning to the end? Because I've heard writers say that you have a idea of what the ending is going to be like, and then you work backwards, and those end up being the best scripts. So based off of what you were saying, I was wondering, do you work from the end of the script to the beginning or the beginning to the end? Does it kind of manifest throughout the progress of writing it?
So I can tell you from what I've seen, and then I'll let these guys talk to their experience as well. But honestly, it really, a lot of what I have personally done myself has been kind of chronological. I'm currently working on a script that I don't really know plot-wise what I want to have happen. So I'm writing scenes and I'm writing things that would happen to the character, and I'm putting this character in different situations, and I'm having the character go through a lot of things. And then I'm going to go back and look at all the scenes that I've written and put them in an order in which I think is the most valuable for that script. I have also talked with people who listen to music, and the music gives them a scene in their head. And whether that scene is in the middle, at the end, at the beginning, it doesn't matter, but they create an entire script or an entire story based off of that one scene that they listen to a piece of music on, or they have an idea of something, like Firestarter came from, Chris's script came from something he was talking about. He really wanted to have the first time he came in, he was talking about, Chris knew exactly what trauma he wanted this character to go through, but he didn't yet know how he wanted to have that character process that trauma and go through that trauma. So he didn't even start at the beginning, middle, or end. He just had something that had happened to the character, and he needed to then figure out where he wanted to put in his world. So to answer your question in a long-winded form, my experience is there hasn't really been a true form of what is the best to do when writing a script or writing the best. It's what do you feel in that moment? Where did you get that inspiration from? Was it something that was a single scene? Is it an entire idea that you have? And to really play with things. So I don't think there is for me, what I've seen so far, there's not a set straight answer of it has to all be in order. It has to all be the best ideas come from the starting at the end and going backwards. So depends on you.
Yeah, why don't y'all also share your processes? 'Cause that might be interesting, because I know we all have different ones.
Mine's kind of similar to what Brian was saying. I kind of just have to write to figure out my story. Like I might have like a very simple idea of like, I want this character in this setting, but I might not know what the story actually is. So I kind of just start writing, and then the characters kind of take on a voice of their own, so to speak. And then you kind of figure it out from there. That's how I do it. I know not everyone writes like that. Some people outline, and like, that's great. And I can't do that.
And that's great.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's a great segue because I outline. Typical of my scripts, I'll kind of, Brian was saying, like I'll pick something, whether it be a trauma or I don't know, something that I can know that can be the root of the character. I know when to stay true to what I'm trying to say. And then I'll basically make an outline of kind of like all the major things. Like it's kind of like the cliche part, but like, you know, the rising action, the central conflict, the inciting incident, like the whole 9 yards of that. And then I kind of just figure out scenes that I want. And then that's when I write those. And really the hard part for me is writing all of the, especially for like a feature, is writing kind of like the real meat and potatoes of it. Like I know the main stuff that I want in the feature or whatever script I'm working on, but me, I put my main focus on getting the main things that I know are important for the characters and the story and where I want it to go. And when I add the real meat and potatoes, the little scenes, little moments, I like giving those room to breathe. And I like not trying to, sometimes those you don't have to go in with a plan. Sometimes when you start doing those main things and as you have the process of writing, then you'll get an idea or something will come up and you'll be like, okay, that's what I want to put my time into, or that's a little something that I'm gonna put time that just feels natural.
Do you want to ask?
Can I-
Christopher?
Yeah,
Real-
so I can talk about inspirations.
Real quick, 1 second. I just want to add, literally, it's going to be 2 seconds, I promise, because I talk a lot right now. One of the biggest things that these two also did talk about is just doing it. So a lot of people talk about that they want to do it, they or have these conceptions in their mind or whatever, but until you start putting things down on paper, it feels like it's really, really far away. But once you just start writing and you just start putting things down on paper, things will start rolling. So at some point, if you're serious about it, you just got to do it. Sorry, go.
Okay, so now as you're talking about your inspirations, do you have any literature heroes like Vince Gilligan, I don't know, Shakespeare, someone who is your inspiration or your hero?
Brian doesn't read.
I read a lot, or I used to read a lot.
I don't know, any way they write, and if you are a writer, and then as when I write, I always like to do it alone, solitude. But at the same time, I like to explore the world. So when I first explore and then write by myself, so I don't know if y'all use, being alone as a or well, for you viewers and
Well, that's an interesting question because we all did a TV writer's room, which is a very communal way to write. But they also did the features.
Yeah, by ourselves.
I will, okay, well, they're thinking of that. I will tell y'all
Dr.
something.
Seuss.
I'm pretty bad at. He's brilliant though. My friend has so many Dr. Seuss tattoos. I would say Fitzgerald is someone to take inspiration from. He sucked in the movie industry. He wrote Great Gatsby and stuff. He wrote a bunch of stuff in the 1920s, but he thought he could be a good novel writer by going into screenwriting. But his wife Zelda was a little bit crazy, and he was a bit crazy, and he became have you ever heard of he had the same issue as Hemingway did with his lemonade. He's a drinker. So his scripts weren't that good. But what I took from him was two things. He couldn't spell for the life of him. I also can't spell. I sent my friend something I wrote the other day, and she said, "Wow, I've never seen anything with so few typos that you've written." And that just kind of hurt a little bit. Yeah, but also he said that the moment his younger brother died was the day he became a writer at 9 years old. And so there's something about, I don't know if I'd say he's an inspiration, but there's something about those two stories. One, he couldn't spell, but he's a famous novelist. And two, he didn't consider himself a writer until he really had to think about life and death and his own mortality through his brother and loss. He didn't think he had anything worth writing. So those two are just important to keep back burner. And then y'all can finish off that.
Yeah, so when you're kind of talking about inspirations and whatnot, I don't have any specific writers that come to mind. I think a lot of it's kind of like what I'm reading at the time. Like when I was a little bit younger, I read a book called The Things They Carried, and that kind of shaped a lot of how I like to write, like the style of that book. And I feel like all the stuff that I read is kind of written in a style that I really enjoy.
What's the style?
I guess it's kind of like these very, like I'm very character focused with my scripts. I love really diving into a character's mind and just kind of, like a lot of the conflict I have is mostly internal stuff.
It shows up on screen really well.
It's great, yeah. You have good actors for it.
That's sarcasm, guys. That's
But
sarcasm.
yeah, so I think a lot of that has to do with kind of what you, for me at least, what I enjoy. So again, like when I have somewhere to write, you're kind of talking about like solitude or working in groups and stuff. Again, I think that it depends on what you're writing. If you're writing something that's like more happy and it's about, maybe it's a comedy or something like that, you don't want to like sit in a dark room by yourself for 8 to 10 hours and write, because then it's not really
Well, it
gonna,
could be a dark comedy.
that's a different
Literally
story.
dark.
But yeah, that's not really gonna like get you where you want to be, you know? And so when I wrote stuff like Firestarter or other stuff, they're very character focused and are very inside people's own, kind of their own heads and kind of dealing with their internal, external trauma. I put myself in places that weren't full of trauma, but like I would go to like a park. And you might think like that doesn't make any sense. Why would you go to a happier place? But you got to think too, what you're writing, you got to be careful to not be too down in the dumps, because your
100%.
story should have some kind of hope. Because you know, we are all fallen and we all have hope to be better. And I think it's important that even if your story doesn't outright say that, which it shouldn't, you should still have that in the back of your head. You should still be living your life that way. And so you should be open to being in different areas and writing in different spots that could put you in a different mindset.
Yeah, that's interesting because an environment really does change mindset. Also with like our screenwriting class, I'd play different music and y'all would be like writing different prompts to different music, and I would be too. I'd be writing prompts. And I noticed, at least with my writing, and definitely with some of y'all's, when the song changed, the scene changed. And you don't realize how much the environments and the music around us influences what we write about. And so it's good. I didn't realize you were that attentive to your environment. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I would also say find a space that feels safe to you. If you have a space to go, writing can be very emotionally draining if you are doing it really character driven and it's an emotional whatever. So group settings were good because we could kind of keep each other accountable and keep each other happy, and or just continuing
or just cry.
Yeah, and it's good to have that feeling be reiterated.
It was really hard, I think, for a lot of us because we hadn't been like we were still getting to know each other because we worked together not even worked together that much. We just had a really very collaborative screenwriting class, and that was the first time I met everybody. When we started writing Planet Poetica was spring of this year, so basically the winter through May or whatever. And I mean, I hadn't, at least for me, I didn't, obviously I know y'all a lot better now, after hours and hours with y'all. But at the beginning, we still were getting to know each other and trust each other. And so it was tricky having a safe space in the writer's room. I found myself getting triggered out of nowhere. Some of our writer's assistant was definitely very sensitive about certain topics that we tackled, and we had to figure out, okay, should they be our writing assistant? We have different ones to swap out. How sensitive should we be? It was really hard for us to create a safe space. I think we ended up doing it because everyone was on board and caring and helpful. Brian also is like, Brian's really into safe spaces, so that was something he tried to also teach us who didn't know as much about it to create.
So
It is, but it was, I mean, for all of us, really, we all had to work together, because if someone was not into the room being safe, if anyone was not on the same page, it would have gone very differently. We all had to be on the same page.
I also think it'd be really cool to look at the first draft into the last one and see that. I think you can see that through
Mhm.
the progress where we didn't open up, nobody was vulnerable. It wasn't really as deep as it
It
should
was just
be.
all a joke.
All jokes and whatever. And then as we progressed, it was still funny, but it was the comedy was the underlying thing to the major.
Because our first pilot, actually, we didn't have any of the Azel stuff. We didn't have any of the mom dying or the Abel stuff. That came several drafts later. That really came in the last month of us having a writer's room, because we were very uncomfortable. Let me give you a little background of how we actually started. So again, I said I met everyone fall 2020, about a year ago now. I've known y'all for like a year. And it was my first time teaching. I didn't really know anyone in Houston. We're all, what time is it? Is it
It's like 4:34.
434.
Okay, so we're waiting for being done. So you can come in, Eric,
What time is this class?
4:45, and then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we all kind of met through screenwriting, and we all kind of created a writer's room accidentally, because there were too many people in the screenwriting class that we had to meet other times to workshop. And so we're basically meeting about the same amount of times, like sometimes 6 hours each time. It was a lot, a week, like 2 times a week sometimes, because we just would go, we hadn't learned like stopping yet. So we would work until we basically dropped and we'd go home if we could. And it was the same with Planet Poetica. We were like, I was like, we're gonna write these like silly shows, and we're gonna film like 5 this semester. And then it just kept getting deeper and deeper, and we're like, why is this so bad? It was because none of us wanted to open up. And I think I was the one that was actually causing most of the problem at first, because I had originally created the concept of the story, but then I didn't want to talk about what I was actually wanting to do with the story. And as a showrunner, that's not good. You're supposed to be a little open. But anyway, they wanted to work on a production, and I was like, let's work on a production. And they had found Planet Poetica. Some of them had found it by looking at my YouTube. I was like, we can do another one. So we just got together. But I will say why the networking thing is important is there are some people that I knew, most people I let on, but there might be some people that weren't really involved with the show because I just didn't want to work with them. Like, they're fine. I just didn't get along with their personality.
And people also, even, and if I can speak to that, there are literally people who I'm really good friends with that I hang out with, we'll go get meals, whatever it is. But we've literally had conversations that we don't work well together
Yes.
creatively. Like him and I,
Mhm.
the person I'm thinking of specifically, we don't, he has a very different idea of what it means to be creative than I do. And so when we work together, we butt heads.
Mhm.
And so that's also something to keep in mind, is that just because you don't want to work with someone doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you
Oh, I
have,
remember you said that. She told us that one time. in person.
and it's
Exact
true.
same thing.
It literally,
Yeah.
you can still be friends with a person and say, listen, I don't like the way that you work creatively.
Mhm.
So let's still be friends, but I just don't want you working on this. So. keep
But
that in
also
mind.
respect your friendships, because I mean, like, I literally could decide who I wanted in my room or not, and who I wanted which role. That was ultimately my decision. And I picked people who I was comfortable with, who I liked not only their writing, but everyone was still newer writers. And I still have a lot of writing I could, really gotten better at. So in a way, I'm new, even though it was a little farther ahead, but I'm still new. I've only been writing screenplays for about 3 or 4 years, which I don't know. I don't know if that's a lot or not. But again, it's like I picked people who I could be friends with. And that is what, at the end of the day, when you say, oh, I gotta be friends with this one, we're networking, or I have to accomplish this task or that task, or that's why I personally, and a lot of professors here are kind of in for more conversational teaching styles, because you learn best from when you're able to feel comfortable and be friends with someone. You want to work with people you can work with for a long time, that you don't mind being stuck with till 3 a.m. And so again, when you network, don't think, oh, I want to be friends with this person because they can do cool things. You all can do cool things if you want to, but find the people who you really gel with.
And then just start, were you gonna say?
Yeah, I got one
something?
add
Go,
on to
go,
that.
go.
Yeah.
We went
I
to
talked too much.
in Austin at South by Southwest
Oh, yeah.
last year. We all went to,
Yeah.
or so Brian. We all went to
Right.
that.
I wasn't invited.
And-
We FaceTimed.
I
him.
FaceTimed
We
you.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
FaceTime,
Elaine
yeah.
had FaceTime, yes.
But we went to basically they had the entire writing team for Atlanta. And so.
To see the new series.
Yeah, the
first
TV
season,
show
the new
Atlanta.
season of it. And so.
It's a TV
Jeff
show.
Channel
Oh.
Gambino, great show. Check it out. And but they had the entire writing team, and they basically, people were asking a lot of the work, we even asked any questions about what it means to be in a writing room, especially when it's a legitimate show that's, has millions of dollars put behind it. And there's a lot riding on, you have all this big production and all these things riding on these writers. And the main thing that they said was basically what we're saying, which was funny at the time, but.
We're like,
Whatever.
Everyone in the writer room, they said the most important thing was that they all liked each other. And they had plenty of times when they didn't agree with each other,
Mhm.
that they would argue,
Mhm.
that they would fight, that they would not want to be there. But they made sure that they made a space where they could all voice their opinions and know that at the end of the day, they're all friends, they all love each other. They all know that they want to make the best best story possible. And the main thing was that they were all cool with each other. They were friends and that they believed in each other.
Mhm.
And once you have a space like that with people that you love and respect,
Mhm.
then everything else comes afterwards. It just comes with it. And if a show like that, has millions of dollars behind it, they're, working on like the last season or, they're 3-4 seasons on Hulu, then I think that you can do that with your friends and do the people you care about and make things that you care about.
100%.
Keep in mind, also, you will get your feelings hurt. There
Yes.
is a 100% chance that at some point in time, regardless of whether you're working with your friends or not,
Mhm.
if you're working with your friends even more so, you will get your feelings hurt. Please be aware that that is a thing that
Yes.
will happen and you need to share that. It has happened to everyone up here and it's happened to everyone up here more than once and with somebody else who's sitting up here. We've all gotten angry with each other. I'm
Yes.
telling you right now, and we are all still really close. It's going to happen.
Yes, and also keep in mind that there will be drama in the room. There's always drama. Everyone's gonna end up fighting or not liking this person for a while or liking this one more than the other. It's just like having a family. So just expect the drama, but try not to get too involved in it. Have the attitude that this is gonna happen and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I don't know if I've gotten mad at Chris or Elena yet, but I know I've gotten mad at Brian.
And vocalize it too,
Writing
though.
stuff.
Yes.
Vocalize it. If you do get emotional or something, tell the other person.
Yes,
Share it.
that's something we all had to work on. I think we all did, not just me, because I'm not used to
We're all bad
vocalizing when I'm mad. I'm just passive aggressive, right? I don't know how to be aggressive. I'm just passive aggressive. And so if even Brian or Alfredo would be like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm fine. It's because I didn't know how to put words to it. So actually it was good for me, even though I'm technically the instructor and the showrunner, to learn how to voice things. And I know I've gotten mad at Brian because we worked in the summer, me and Alfredo and Brian worked together all the time.
Every day.
Alfredo and I probably butt heads more than me and Brian, but me and Brian, oof. At the end of the day, there was the end of
Brings you
the
closer.
production. I think it was after we did the attic stuff and we were trying to decide whether to go back to the attic or what. Oh, was that day when I had to drag Brian? When he was doing improv, we were
Yeah.
improvising the scene.
Chris knows because I was so
Yes,
mad.
you were so
Yeah.
different.
Oh,
And then,
I was so mad.
it was like the last day of shooting and he was playing Deshaunashay and I was supposed to be we're trying to improv the scene and I'm supposed to be, come on Deshaunashay, let's go.
Oh,
And then Brian,
Oh, yeah.
it felt like dead weight and we're still filming and we're trying to role play it. I'm trying to get him up and out, but he doesn't move and then I'm dragging him across the room.
It does look really
And,
funny on camera.
Did you
though.
see it?
Yes, we looked at
I
it.
don't remember.
It was so good.
But it was one of those things where it's just like, I was pissed. I mean, I was upset that
I was pissed.
You already
You could be upset.
I was like, he is acting up.
I was. Everyone knew it too.
Yeah, but it was the only time. He usually is the least likely to get mad at people. Well, no, Chris actually, I don't think Chris has ever gotten.
Chris didn't have to be there every day with
No, he
everybody.
didn't.
So I was chill as a cucumber.
Why didn't you write it till you have around 8 minutes left?
I
Oh,
believe
8
you.
minutes. Okay.
Well,
Chris,
that's
what do you
3
have?
minutes.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
feel like I can relate to Chris the most. So I think this question for all of you the most is Chris.
Wow.
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 And
That's
is-
the way your face beamed.
Okay, so for me, I tend when I write, it's with intention. It's with the purpose of a specific result. So it's hard for me to understand the process of writing for fun, because for me, writing is a medium to accomplish a particular thing. What advice would you give someone like me who writes with intention for a specific result, and writing is only the medium?
Yeah, I would say, well, first, like, you know what intentions you want to write for. I think you probably have clear things where you're like, I want to send this message, I want to accomplish this, I want to say this about myself, about the world. And I think it's important to do, but I also think it's important to get out of your comfort zone and try writing for fun. Now, that doesn't mean that you sit there for like 2 hours and just kind of sit and just like be like, oh, I don't know, you know what I mean? But it could be something where you give yourself 2 to 3 minutes, you put a timer, and you just look up random writing prompts. And you give yourself 2 minutes to just write, like whatever. And you don't have to do that all day, every day, or like multiple times a day, but every once in a while, just to kind of like give your mind a little reset. 'Cause that's what I do. Because whenever I write stuff, like, especially when I get in that place and I know exactly what I want to write and where I want to go, it's sometimes you do hit that wall against yourself. And I think to get out of that and to even inspire you to do other things, you got to get out of your comfort zone. Because we've been talking about the whole time about being comfortable. But there's also, it comes a time when you
Feeling
know that
safe.
feeling safe, but it also comes a time when you need to get uncomfortable in a safe way. But sometimes you just got to get out of your element and you got to do something different. So give you a 2-minute thing, you put a little clock on and you just like, you have a topic, you look up something, you put writing prompt and you just write. It doesn't have to be, anything funny, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. You just write whatever comes to mind. Just to push yourself creatively, to try to get your mind spread out. Because that's the only way you'll really grow, is getting out of your comfort zone. That's why I wrote a musical, right? That's why I've written romance things I would never be like, that's a thing I write. But I try to write those things to kind of push myself out and to grow as a writer.
If I can close with one last thing, because I know we don't have much time. What I want to say is, at some point, it is really important, and you will learn this as you continue to go on. And at some point, it will hit you if you're serious about this, because this is a degree that is, we have a lot of people come in, and if you kind of want to just do whatever, you can do whatever, you can learn about it, you can go through. If this is something you really, really want to do, not only do you need to take it seriously, but at some point you have to just do something. And so for me, I came into this degree thinking I knew everything, that I could whatever. And the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing. And on top of that, at some point, you just have to get together with a group of people or by yourself and actually just do something. The longer you wait, the longer you say, oh, this, and this, and this, the longer it's going to get put off and it's not going to get done. Keep in mind as well, take these things seriously. If you're on your phone during class, or if you're not paying attention, if you have a little panel up here and you're like, oh, this is going to be an easy class and I can just kind of breeze through and I don't need to take notes or I don't need to do anything, you're not really getting much out of this. And if you truly, truly, truly want to make it in this career, in this path, whether you want to be a novelist, whether you want to do movies, whatever you want to do, come talk to us, come find us, listen to everything that we have to say. We're no experts by any means, but we do have experience and we do have knowledge. And it's so important. The last thing I want to say about that is that this campus and Professor Schofield has been doing an amazing job of providing opportunities if you don't know where to start, if you don't know what to do. Come find us, come talk to us. I am shamelessly plugging this, but the workshop on Friday, teaching people how to screenwrite, it is 15 minutes. Every person in this room I know has 15 minutes on a Friday to come learn about screenwriting. And if you're serious about it and you're serious about doing production stuff, come to the screenwriting thing. It also shows us who's serious about it. And it shows us who wants to work, who wants to be here. And us as upperclassmen sitting up here, if we see you on your phone while we're trying to talk, or we see you not paying attention or whatever it is, it makes it less encouraging for us to want to come talk to you and come ask you on our stuff. But the people who are paying attention, asking questions, being involved, it's awesome. It's great. And that's what we like to see.
That's true. There are consequences that you don't even notice. If people see, oh, they're not interested, we remember those things. Everyone just as a human being. So always, if you're interested, show interest. We'll notice.
And the opportunities that we're providing are short enough that it's literally 15 minutes on a Friday. Come find what it's about. You don't have to stay the whole time. It's completely optional. And then like I'm sorry, your name in the back. Christopher, like you were saying, you want to practice writing for fun. We do MFA level. It's the highest level of writing practices that you can do. And for 45 minutes, you just do a writing exercise and you can help practice writing for fun. Come check out. And even if you don't want to write, even if you don't want to write scripts, just come write in novel form.
Yep.
Come do whatever it is. And that 45 minutes, it'll all be for fun. It'll not be with a purpose. The purpose will be to finish it, but whatever you want to say. But then, yeah, come get practice doing that as well. So there's so many opportunities on this campus. Go talk to your other professors. Every professor here is providing opportunities, and the more interest you show, the more interest they'll show back.
Yes, and one last thing just to add on, I led the one last time, but they will also be leading lectures based on their their kind of things within the screenwriting, like their expertise. So you're gonna meet a lot more people too. Wait, real quick, what time is it?
It is
It's
4:48.
Okay, whoever wants to leave can leave, but if you have more questions, we just gonna stay here for the next class, or if you want to have to be.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thank you.
you realize that a lot of your issues stem from your biases, right?
Stem from what?
By your own biases.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
You realize that arguments real there, but you do it anyway, so what's the point?
Because we need to, we're external processors.
Yes. We're all external
If you
processors.
want to,
Sound very logical.
You also find that most of the stuff in this degree isn't very logical anyway, except for like operating a camera. That's pretty logical. But writing is one of the most creatively unlogical things I think. I've
What if
done.
you're still, what if you're like a freshman like I am and you're still trying to figure out things like you know more info or like figure out whether you're still trying to decide.
I would say you have a little more time. You have time. You're a freshman, you're young. I'm an old guy. It took me, I dropped out of college at one point and I finally came back. I'm an old man. So for me, it took a while for me to realize what it is that I wanted to do. So you do have time. These old, everybody else is
12 to
talking.
1,
That's great. What's up?
and we'll have like lectures
We
and
had a panel.
it's in 1:30. Yep, and each class
Yeah.
will build off the previous.
Wait, if someone wants to apply for the
So, like,
assistant.
not level.
Assistant in
I'm
what?
only-
Better than I thought.
Yep. Tell these sons up here. Hear that?
Well,
I'm not old,
start
I'm
by
60.
coming to
I keep
the
telling
Friday
you,
classes.
don't tell me that, Brian, because I see you're not old.
1:30, so it's from 12 to 1. I think I gave the info in the last email I shot out like 30 minutes before.
Your own.
Yeah. But I used Blackboard.
Give me the-
So 1:30 down there from 12 to 1. Good old time. So we kind of start
But
with the
there's also, like,
lecture and then if
editing
we have
you do.
time, we went kind of long last time, but don't go past 1.
Okay.
So,
I'll start talking like, actually.
Actually, no.
Yeah, let's shut it down.
I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna go to.
Here's a seat. It's the one I forwarded you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the writer, so anything that
I'm
he
not
has to
sure. I
say.
guess whatever your job would be in it, then something that's like a computer, like you need to do a journalism
Instead of using the word I told him.
whatever just matches whatever they do. Do something. I know that's not very helpful. I know.
like the options to take classes.
You know how those are.
If you.
It's still recording.
Oh,
Just look
I
up
know,
like
I'm looking
prompts and
to
look
find
at
that.
examples, like read a news article or something, or what's easiest to remember.
Don't.
Some of those. So far, I've only counted
There's
just
also
like
editing.
mhm, but the rest I don't. That's so
There's
You just have
editing.
something like that.
It's actually my favorite.
Yeah.
I always feel like it's nice to do a bio,
No, seriously
interview someone and kind of like keep your story for interview, for example, and turn it into like what would be
Oh,
like a magazine, like.
Yeah, this is
a
the country
interview
club.
kind of thing, stuff like that.
Rats.
How is it Good.
Probably not.
Work in the morning.
We're gonna celebrate you.
Probably like
I like
the
it.
Roman normals.
Okay. I'll put
Space
something
out, I
on.
would think.
Yeah.
Whatever,
You know
it
what-
might
you know what
be
these
cool.
two
I
have to
didn't
see?
read it too closely, I just followed you when I saw the email, so, yeah. I have a lot, I have a lot of stuff.
Why, were you guys not gonna tell me that all my sunburns is peeling?
It's okay.
I didn't see
I
you.
didn't see
I
it to the
know she
best
was
of my
sunburned.
ability.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or the-
Lake Conroe.
Yeah,
No, Lake,
trust-
yeah,
trust
Lake
yourself.
Conroe.
Oh,
I know it's your leg.
Oh, it doesn't have to be, it can be like, pretty much a scene, but it's just no dialogue.
They weren't that dark before.
They don't even
Oh,
look
yeah,
burnt,
so
they
that's
look
it.
tan.
Or I can grab it. Thank you very much.
I wanna get a full body. Yeah. You look good on it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so right here, yes, I'm so sorry. The log line is on the syllabus. If you click on the syllabus, there's a link that explains what the log line is. You're basically saying this is what the story is about. Yeah, so that'll tell you how to write the log line.
I've been trying to get Matt to show it, and every time.
You're gonna miss that. No, you can click on it from there. That's what it is. So the log line is basically.
The second time it was me.
That was the due date today?
It's only because you said for Friday.
Or is this for Thursday?
Fair enough, things happen.
So what's the assignment?
Oh, today's the 20th. What? Oh, yeah.
So what's the
Ah,
assignment?
Oh, it's okay.
It's only two.
I know. It's Tuesday and
What's
Thursday.
the,
Yes, Kate?
because what's the assignment for for Tuesday? Like, what's the next assignment?
I should have gone over that. So we're going to write, you're gonna write a log line for TV shows. So basically in one sentence, you're gonna give an idea of what the TV show is about. So the one you're telling me about like Poetica,
I can't, like, see, I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, because I'm still trying to figure things out, but I was thinking of making an HBO original series called Huskies Forever, that would be like a comedy, take place at HBO.
and write what happens in one sentence. That's your log line.
I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Just said this to my.
So you're ahead. You're
My
good.
source. I'm like,
question is, I know there's a minor for cinema also, but is there any,
I didn't say his name.
is there,
Still
are
recording.
the cinema classes only chances for